Welcome to the Inspiring Sustainability podcast. And today we're also going live on Periscope. So welcome to all those people that are joining us live on the video. And today I have Tom Auld and Karl Walker joining me here today, who have a number of hats that they wear. And so I'm really looking forward to finding out about them, their businesses and their journeys that they've been on. And if you want to listen to more podcasts, so obviously there's more podcasts on the Inspiring Sustainability series, plus you can find them on the website, plus other blogs about other interesting topics. So, Tom and Karl, do you want to, what I'd say is just give us a very quick summary of yourselves, and then I'll ask you to go into a bit more detail about a particular journey that you went on. Sure. So, Tom, maybe first.
Yeah, I guess I'm one of those people who had a sort of an unquenched desire to really get out and do something from a sustainability background.
So what are you best known at doing at the moment?
What am I best known?
What are you doing at the moment? What's the big thing?
The two big projects we're working on at the moment with businesses are energy clean switching organisations.
Right.
So one of them is there to help individuals switch to clean energy supply through a program called the Big Clean Switch. Yeah. And the second is Clean Energy UK, and that helps organisations and businesses switch to clean energy supply. So
Great.
that's what we do.
Great. And that's your main day job as well?
Yeah,
Karl?
exactly.
Right,
Main day job. I also sit on the board of directors for the Carbon Free Group as well. That's an innovative platform for launching clean, renewable technologies, predominantly just clean, innovative tech.
Great. That's very interesting. Great stuff. Okay then. So one of the things that piqued my interest when I met you guys a month or two ago was actually that both of you have got some association with Al Gore. So I thought a really great way to start this interview would be for you individually to tell me about your journeys to kind of meeting Al, and then maybe what's happened since then. And also understand that actually maybe brought you together. So at some point there'll be a seeking in together. So maybe start with you, Karl, this time. What's took you to Al in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I practiced in energy and sustainability for about 15 years plus. Originally started my career out working in Australia for Interface. You kind of pioneered the whole Interface carpets.
Right. Okay.
Pioneered the whole sustainable business development, and so I then spent 15 years working predominantly in green building design and construction, and led the agenda for the Brent Civic Centre, which was awarded for the most sustainable public building in the UK, running on waste fish oil. And I had an extraordinary experience working and supporting the leading the sustainability team at ACOM. Okay. And following that, I just got to a point where I was just like, I really enjoyed the experience of working on large-scale projects, but there was something I needed to go and entertain and understand a bit more. And obviously, when you're working in a large-scale commercial outfit, it's probably only about 30% of the projects that you're working on are really pushing the bounds in terms of innovation. And so I took a sabbatical, and I went to Southeast Asia, where I have family out there, and did a whole number of volunteer projects. I was building check dams in the jungle, teaching English, doing various projects at schools, and part of that process enabled me to find the time to apply for something I've been wanting to do for a while, which was the Climate Reality Project. And so I applied, and I was accepted and went to do the course in Australia, where I met some extraordinary people. Had an amazing educational experience.
And this is where you taught, was Al there for that?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. I mean, there's a large number of people there,
of course, but
you do get some interpersonal time as well, although that's obviously limited. There's a lot of people there. But I think what was extraordinary about that is you witness being in the presence of someone who has an extraordinary aura about them. They're very, very powerfully motivated in a very positive and constructive way. And that was a very interesting experience. And I think all of us, have witnessed times where what's going on around us in the world is quite difficult to see. And I remember Al Gore presenting what is probably about 3 or 4 hours of his presentations and explaining the reasoning behind them. And he said some very poignant words, which were, there is no time for despair. And in all honesty, I was at a point taking some time out from work. Perhaps wasn't at a place of despair, but I was definitely coming to terms with what we were doing to our collective home. And so that was a very powerful experience, and essentially motivated me to come back to the UK after teaching kids, because you make a commitment, having done the climate reality training. I taught kids in the ages of 7 to 18, not something I've been accustomed to doing, and taught them to understand the concept of climate change.
Interesting.
And it was very rewarding, actually, very rewarding. And that came back, and climate reality is essentially how Tom and I met, actually.
Right, okay. So maybe, Tom, you give us a quick sort of summary of yourself that took you up to meeting Karl, and then you kind of like take on
jump from a little forward.
Keep going.
Well, I think we need to acknowledge The Inconvenient Truth, which was Al's first film in 2006. I knew there were challenges in the world, but I hadn't really seen them clearly articulated and kind of explained. And that film was really empowering and motivating for me. It was certainly sitting in the back of my mind over almost the next decade, or the next kind of 8 years, when I knew I wanted to be doing something helping our future, something sustainably orientated. As it happens, I was working in an industry and an organisation that was making products in southern China and flying half of them around the world, and I was probably building up a big carbon debt by doing so. And so I left that organisation 3 years ago. I wanted to go out and do something myself, apply the entrepreneurial commercial skills that I had obtained and put them to good use. And I took the opportunity to follow through with this aspiration to learn more about the inconvenient truth. And at the time I hadn't realised that there was this thing called climate reality, which is run by Al Gore, and it's a follow-on really from the inconvenient truth. There's probably about 10,000 climate reality trained leaders around the world, which he's helped train, and really we are trained up to provide and talk through kind of a presentation which is the modern day equivalent of that film. So I learned that the organisation existed and wanted to go on one of the training sessions, which was out in the US. Unfortunately, it clashed with my brother's wedding, and there's only a couple of these each year, and I did wrestle with it quite hard, and in the end I thought it was better not to I thought I should go to the wedding.
That's probably politically that's your family. So it's good.
So thinking outside the box, I could wait for 6 months, or I could actually find other people in the UK who'd already been on the course and learn from them. And so after much kind of badgering the US office, they revealed that there was a talk taking place in London that was sort of coming up the following week. So I went up to London, and it turned out to be a talk that Karl was doing. I think the twist in the story, it was meant to be a private talk that he was giving to us, a board of architects in a sort of private kind of penthouse office, and somehow I wound my way in there, sat down, and with a few kind of surprised looks. But that was when we met, and I then went on to go out to the Philippines to do my training there, which was in itself incredible. And it's worth acknowledging why they've chosen the Philippines, because as I say, 2 or 3 times a year they'll choose to do a training course in different countries. The reason they chose the Philippines is that the Philippines have been consistently hit by some of the world's largest storms coming off the Pacific, and they call it sort of Typhoon Alley. And we actually were lucky enough to have a talk from the mayor of Tacloban, and the Tacloban was basically ground zero for the world's largest storm that hit the island. It just completely devastated it. So hearing from the mayor of Tacloban firsthand around how that had hit the island was just awakening.
Sobering, yeah.
Sobering, yeah.
So tell me, you guys met up. Looks like a marriage made in heaven. Love at first sight. And then you consummated that with a couple of businesses.
Yeah.
So just we'll come back to those businesses a little bit later, because that's what you've been kind of working on to a certain extent since then. So what I'm really interested in, flowing on from that conversation about Al and the Inconvenient Truth, is that, as you say, there's many positives that have come out from An Inconvenient Truth. But one thing that I'm personally curious about, and we've actually talked about before, is what were maybe some of the unintentional things that happened that came out of An Inconvenient Truth and Al Gore's position that maybe we can learn from, and actually going forward we've got ways and means of helping climate action happen in more of a flow than sometimes it's a little bit staccato at the moment.
Well, if any of the listeners and watchers are interested in climate change and the psychology behind climate change, I would urge them to go and read up on George Marshall, who's published an incredible piece of work digging into the psychology of climate change. And there's a few kind of lessons or bits of information that sort of come from his work. One is if people are given a problem that seems too big to digest, they tend to put their heads in the sand.
Yeah, turn a blind eye.
And I think you could argue that that's what the Inconvenient Truth did to some people. Secondly, at the time, there was more around articulating the problem, and the solutions weren't in the foreground. And so it was more of a negative message than a positive one. And people tend to associate change with negativity, when in actual fact change should be about progression and positivity. Yeah. So I think those are two elements, and certainly, particularly in the US, climate change has become this heavily politicized word that is completely detached from the science and the meaning of what it actually supports. It's a political football which is now being kicked around, and it's in part due to these kind of very entrenched environmental sort of position that's associated with climate change. When in actual fact, climate change is way more about the environment. It's about our economy. The economy survives and depends on our environment. It's about social justice and people's well-being around the world. That they need the land and the resources to exist. But unfortunately, climate change has been pigeonholed with this environmental piece, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So I mean, Karl, one of the things that I've been really interested in is about also that it's something about how it's become, as you say, quite sort of separated. With to caricature it, there's the Democrats on one side, the Republicans on the other, or certainly the
narrative is very divisive. Yeah.
So one of the things I'm interested in your thoughts about that. How do we kind of in the UK particularly, and maybe globally, some of the things that you've been seeing that have been helping take it away from being that either you believe in it or you don't. You're climate action or you're climate denier. Anything that you've kind of come up with that you've felt with that?
I think first and foremost it's changing the conversation. It's having the conversation with individuals who potentially have very different core values from us as individuals, and having the conversation and finding a point at which you can connect, finding a point in which you can come together and not necessarily agree, but it might be around an issue of importance to the other person. I think too often we've become, and particularly in the environmental movement, there's a very divisive nature. The narrative that we're using is kind of the enemy narrative. And actually, I don't believe that's the narrative that's going to get us the solutions that we need in the time frame that we need.
Yeah. And I think now one of the things that I should also talk to me a bit about, because I think this will be coming through this, is actually I understand that you had something quite exciting which happened after these conversions that you went through with Al being a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually has kind of focused you on something which is a bit different. Tell me more about that.
Absolutely. I think Tom and I met through the Climate Reality project, and I think there was I think the Climate Reality Programme is extraordinary. It takes it presents an invitation in terms of material understanding to a certain audience, but I don't necessarily think at the moment it's broad enough in its scope, and I think there's room for expanding it into a narrative that is perhaps a bit more creative. Tom and I spent 2 weeks in Paris over COP21, immersed in what was called the Creative Factory, place to be, and there we met an extraordinary number of creatives and individuals who were kind of looking at George Marshall was one of them, who were looking at the climate narrative in a very different way, sort of expanding on it and not looking at it in a way that's sort of divisive in nature. Whether it's liberals, Democrats, Republicans, looking at it in a much more sort of holistic way. But anyway, we spent 2 weeks immersed in these creative factories, working on real life projects, or what would potentially be real life projects. Paris is actually where we met an organisation called Here Now Purpose, who Tom and I are working with through our campaign, the Big Clean Switch. So it's been a real energizer in terms of not only bringing us together as an organisation, but also it's created this very synergistic opportunity, which is great. Yeah.
No, I mean, great. And Tom, what's been the kind of that creative aspect? How's that being expressed? Because I know you've set up these couple of main businesses, and so take us on that journey about how you've focused, in a sense. What I'm really interested in is about how you focused on action, what people can do, and also this isn't about climate; it's about clean, and which is there's two pivots there. So, it used to be about belief in climate, and now it's about clean and action, which are much more positive stories. So tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody, when you get on a one-to-one basis, acknowledges there's an issue, and it's just that they've got busy lives and they're focused on living those lives. So it's about making change as easy as possible for them to sort of buy into. And in actual fact, just removing it slightly from the kind of the deep green movement and making it a more sort of mainstream, digestible thing is better. So we've got those two organisations and sort of campaigns. One's called Clean Energy UK and one's called Big Clean Switch. And you're right, we're focusing on the word clean over green. No one can argue with the word clean. No one wants dirty. And we worked very hard to make it easy for an organisation or a household to switch to a clean energy supplier. Generally, it doesn't cost them any money. On a domestic level, we're seeing at the moment average savings of over £200 per household, which is amazing. So if you make it easy to do, you help save people money. The third part is the way we've sort of spread the word and got out to speak to people is through partners. And these are either NGOs or corporates or media companies. So as an example, we ran a campaign with Deloitte. We helped the Deloitte staff kind of switch to clean energy supply. And again, people are living their lives and they need some sort of, they're being bombarded with communication. So if we can communicate with them through a trusted sort of third party, then that's our approach to kind of helping drive change.
So yeah, and now it's inspiring because what it is about recognising that what we can do with a lot of these things is actually create it so that it doesn't have to be kind of completely conscious that people are doing it. It's doing it because their organisation or an NGO they recommended likes it, and then you're actually just making it flow and easy for them. And what are you finding? Have you got any intelligence or data on the sort of people that are switching and that side of things?
Well, we ran a bunch of market research, quite a lot of market research beforehand to justify the whole project. And we have uncovered that 83% of individuals actively prefer to be with a clean energy supply, but the vast majority of people just didn't realise it was available. The highest bracket in terms of age was actually between 55 and 65 in terms of the respondents, in terms of their warmness, which I actually found surprising. But it was all within a few degrees, few percent. All within a few percent. So yeah, over 80% of the UK was sort of polling towards actively wanting to be clean energy. So people want change. We need to make it easy for them. I think that's the thing.
And so you talked about domestic side, but what about you've got a business, the Switch as well? Tell me more about that, Karl.
So we also, it's not just about domestic supply and making that easier. It's also, and a big part of this is about education. It's not only individuals, it's also businesses. First of all, they don't know that clean energy is available to them. So 100% renewable energy. They don't know that it's available to them, and they don't know that it's both affordable and competitive and very easy to do. So it's not necessarily just about putting photovoltaics, solar panels all over buildings, which, absolutely, yes, that's important. But first and foremost, the one thing that businesses can do, the easiest and most cost-effective thing that they can do, in fact, they're likely to save money in a number of instances, depends on the circumstances, but if you don't investigate, you don't find out. So switching to a clean energy supplier is something that businesses can do tomorrow, or at least start the process rolling. It's obviously subject to contract end dates and that side of things, slightly different from domestic in that sense, but it's something that they can press a button and start to work towards a low carbon transition plan.
Right, great stuff. And so what's been your progress in these two businesses? Which one's doing the best, or which bits of which one's doing best? And tell me a little bit more about the reality of your two businesses.
Well, everything takes time, but we're delighted. I'll talk about the Big Clean Switch. We've got a number of partners that we are engaged with and promoting to either their staff or their customers or their stakeholders in some ways. So Adams, the brewers, we're sort of just going live with at the moment.
Okay,
Yorkshire Tea are coming up.
Okay, great.
We've got Islington Council we're working with. Manchester Greater Authority we're putting some plans together with. So there's quite a diverse range of organisations that really buy into the idea of helping their stakeholders switch, which is great.
Great. And what about on the business side? Which one's kind of been the one that's kind of flourishing currently?
Well, they kind of bounce off each other, So if we're speaking to an organisation about the Big Clean Switch, it often invites the conversation about have they actually switched their own supply. And so there's it's
natural.
It's sort of natural kind of supports each other really.
I think on the business side, there's a lot of it doesn't have to be big companies, it can be SMEs, cafes, restaurants, etc. And they wax lyrical about fresh organic ingredients. Well, actually, if they work with us, we give them a little sticker that goes in the window to say proudly powered on fresh organic energy.
Interesting.
Nice play. So it's suddenly your energy bill isn't just a cost; it's something you can talk about proudly.
And have you got any kind of numbers about how many people you've helped switch that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a small business. We've not been going for a long period of time. But
how long have you been going? Sorry.
In terms of the clean energy brands, about 12 months.
All right, okay.
We've switched about 300 businesses, but we have a large order book of businesses that obviously, there's the contract end dates that come into the zone.
Right.
That can be sort of 6 months in advance, 9 months in advance. So we've got a strong order book coming forward, which is good.
And what about on the domestic
Big Clean
side?
Switch, so we're coming up to our first 1,000 customers, which we're delighted by, and we hope that to be. We want to make it 250,000, which would equate to about 1% of the UK market. So
right. Okay. Great.
That's the goal.
So you got exponential ambitions.
Exponential ambitions, but it's only Big Clean Switch launched at the beginning of the year, so we're kind of right at the beginning of that journey, really.
Right. Okay. So the clean energy UK started first.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And what in terms of we're starting to wrap up now. What have you learned through this journey, particularly the recent journey, that you think that the listeners might find useful to apply for their own lives?
Yeah, I think there's always personal learning and growth, which is important, that comes out of the experience of trying to do something a bit differently. that's extraordinary. But I think in terms of the key kind of learning is that the communication to each organisation needs to be different. Each organisation is at a different stage of the development of how they either perceive clean energy or whether they're willing to embrace it. So adjusting the narrative accordingly and responding in that way.
Great. Okay. And Tom, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think on a simplistic level, we can all be agents of change just through our choice of what we eat and buy and use, goods and services. So I think just becoming by sort of conscious shoppers, active citizens, all those little things do add up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh no, what I'm interested in actually, and I think that's absolutely true. But it actually, for me, what's personally interesting, just as a final comment, actually, be interested in your thoughts on that. Actually, that only really works when we've got like effectively a herd mentality going in a direction. So, and also then when organisations it becomes such a herd that they start to choice edit on our behalf. So the example will be fair trade, and particularly bananas. So for a period you couldn't choose fair trade, and then you could choose fair trade, but only from like kind of expensive organic hippie stores. And then you started to get them on the shelves of the supermarkets, but only maybe Waitrose. And then now actually it's got to the point where Sainsbury's, they only sell fair trade bananas. So that's obviously influencing the market strongly.
Sure.
And so...
I think eggs is another great example.
Yeah, exactly. And now the amount of people that actually pay a good premium for organic and free range is a lot. And actually it's often at least half as much again. But the people just automatically pay that.
Yeah, businesses do listen to what consumers are doing. They do watch what consumers are doing and react. So I think the other thing I'd take away from my experience in the last 18 months is actually the amount of change that is happening. So don't be negative. Don't think that things aren't going to change. What's changed in the last decade is monumental. We need a lot more change, and people can be active agents in that change if they choose to be.
So I think the thing for me, just as a final my comment as summarising it, is that obviously you guys have been through a really big change journey yourself. You had Karl had quite a different career, even though it was the same industry, because obviously you were a paid employee, fairly high profile in that sense, and then you had to take time out to work on it. And then Tom, you were living the good life with a fantastic business which was making lots of money, but you didn't feel nourished by it. So then you went on that journey, met Al, but then recognised there was actually things that you could do which are even beyond what Al was saying, because you focused initially on maybe the training and the teaching, and then actually you recognised that you could do on focusing on the action and the clean solutions. And so, and what I'm really, and the reason why I wanted to do this interview and profile you is actually not help you, but just make it so that it happens that you're flying through that 250,000, or you've influenced somebody else to fly through it. Whatever, just as long as it's happening. Obviously, if you get the 250,000, it's going to line your pockets nicely. But it's about us getting that sort of that herd mentality, just going in the right direction.
Crossing the chasm, as Simon Sinek.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for those people that have managed to tune in to see us. And I would also like to remind people that they can find more Inspiring Sustainability podcasts on inspiring-sustainability.com, plus blogs, and you can follow me on various social media platforms, and you'll also see the same platforms that you can follow Tom and Karl through that. So Adam Woodhall signing off from this Inspiring Sustainability podcast. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And thank you, Karl.
Thank you, Aaron.
And goodbye to the listeners. Thank you.